Shalom, everyone, and welcome back. A good Erev Shabbos to you all. This coming Shabbos is a very auspicious one. It is the 20th day of the month of Cheshvan, which is the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Shalom Dovber, who was the son of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Marash, Rabbi Shmuel of Lubavitch. He was born in the city of Lubavitch, in the town of Lubavitch. Lubavitch was a very mystical, remarkable little town in Belarus, in White Russia. It was the center of the Jewish mystics who lived at that time, the Society of Nistarim, who were very holy, mystical, spiritual rabbis who traveled throughout Europe, helping people and doing all kinds of miraculous, wondrous things with people and aiding Jewish people in any way they could. And from time to time, they would come together in a type of conclave in this town of Lubavitch. And so, therefore, a lot of rabbis would come and go. In many respects, it was sort of like Crown Heights in Brooklyn, but not quite as big. And Rabbi Shalom Dovber, the Rashab, was born into that remarkable family of Jewish mystics. While he was the middle son of the previous Rebbe, but nevertheless he was chosen to be the Rebbe of Lubavitch. And his life was quite remarkable. He was born during the latter time of the Tsarist regime in Russia, which was a very cruel regime, very heartless regime, in which they tried to convert the Jewish people and to assimilate the Jewish people into Russian culture by introducing secular Russian studies and a Russian language into the schools. The rabbis fought it very harshly because they felt that it was the way for the Russian government to assimilate the Jewish population into a Russian culture. We know that that has never worked before. We know that in Germany before World War II, they also tried to assimilate the Jewish people. The Jewish people were quite assimilated. They spoke German. They looked like Germans. They spoke German and everything like that. Look what happened there. In any case, he fought very much against the Haskalah movement, the Enlightenment movement, the early Reform movement at the time in Russia. And he attended meetings with prominent rabbis throughout Europe during much of his life. He traveled a great deal. And during these times, he took with him his only son, Yosef Yitzchak, who turned out to be his successor. And he was an incredible scholar. He was a leader of Jewish people. People looked at him for leadership and for advice. And as a result of it, he became a target for the Tsarist regime, and then later the Bolshevik regime, the communist regime. He passed away in March of 1920, just 3 years after the Bolshevik Revolution. He had to flee the city of Lubavitch, his home and the center of the movement, and he ended up in Rostov, which I believe is in Latvia. And he lived the rest of his life, the end of his life, in Rostov, and there indeed he is buried at that place. His life was a remarkable one. He, even though he traveled a great deal, and he was very, very much into communal affairs, nevertheless he was a great scholar. In fact, Hasidim call him the Rambam of Hasidus, the Maimonides of Hasidus, just like Maimonides took all of Jewish law and systematized it and compacted it into the Mishnah Torah, that it would be more available and understandable to the masses. So the Rebbe Rashab did similar to Hasidic philosophy. And there are many, many mamarim, many discourses that he wrote that were called hemshechim. A hemshech is a continuous series of discourses which are connected one to the other. And unlike the current Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who spoke his mamarim and his sichas, and then they were transcribed, the Rebbe Rashab did the opposite. He wrote them down, and then he spoke them. And these hemshechim these types of mamarim could last for as much as 3 years. They could go on and on and on over a period of sometimes of 3 years, although sometimes less than that. And they're quite well known, and they later they were discovered and transcribed and printed. In fact, during his lifetime, I don't believe they were printed, but they were printed later by his son and his successors, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the current Lubavitcher Rebbe. They printed them, and they are well known, and they are studied to this day. The Rebbe Rashab was also very well known for founding the Lubavitch Yeshiva, Tomchei Temimim. He decided that the world needed a yeshiva, which in the yeshiva they not only studied Nigla de Torah, such as Talmud and codes of Jewish law, halacha, but they also studied Hasidic philosophy. It was the first yeshiva in the world to incorporate Hasidic philosophy into the curriculum of the yeshiva. And it became quite a well-known yeshiva. In fact, many young men from all over Europe came to study in Tomchei Temimim, even from people not from Chabad homes. They would come because it was simply a good yeshiva to study in. It was a very good yeshiva. And many of them were very affected by the Hasidic philosophy, the Hasidic way of life, and they indeed became Chabad followers, and they became followers of the Rebbe Rashab. The Yeshiva Tomchei Temimim today is located centrally in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, and there are branches of it all over the world, in many different countries, including in Israel. So the Yeshiva Tomchei Temimim is vibrant and alive today as well, all due to the efforts of the Rebbe Rashab. Hasidim make farbrengens during this time. They come together, they gather together, they discuss the legacy of the Rebbe Rashab, they study the works and Torah of the Rebbe Rashab, and we should do that here as well. Candlelighting this Shabbos is at 7:35. We are reading the Parshas Vayera, which discusses the birth of Yitzchak, and indeed how Yitzchak was chosen by God, by Avraham, to be the successor of the Jewish people, and the remarkable legacy of Yitzchak. It's all mentioned in the Torah. I want to wish you all a good Shabbos, and God willing, we'll speak to you again after Shabbos. Bye-bye.